We're doing a computer shift here. I have the pleasure today of introducing two of my longtime colleagues and friends at a meeting organized by another longtime colleague and friend. Dorrit and I were in graduate school together. And so whatever is wrong with her happened at Chapel Hill with me. Heidi and I met many years ago when I was in graduate school at Chapel Hill. And she came to visit and stayed in my apartment. And that was our first meeting. We have since met frequently at conferences, and the same with Cheatham. The International Association for Cross-Cultural Psychology is the place that we often find ourselves. Cheatham was our very first female president in the organization. We love it. Heidi is obviously a leading scholar looking at child development, and she's going to talk about some of her studies today. But she is at the research unit on culture, learning, and development in the Lower Saxonian Institute of Early Development and Learning, also known as NIFLA, which you will see in many of the logos on here. She is going to be talking about her topic today, which is lessons from research around the globe, the importance of culture. And one of the things that I think is very important for you to know about my dear friend Heidi is not only is she an excellent researcher, but she's a wonderful mentor, and I think you've had the exposure to some of these already with Hilla and some of our other colleagues that have come from Ghana and some other stuff. Welcome, Heidi.
Yeah, thank you very much for this invitation to be part of this adventure. So first of all, Dorrit, where are you? Here. Dorrit and I met through the facilitation of Cheatham. We had met before, but we haven't been in touch much. But Cheatham and the legendary Species, one of the ISCCP conferences, talked to me. You have to talk to Dorrit. She's trying to do great things. And she's looking for a German collaborator. And she told similar things to Dorrit. And I thought, oh my God, with my German background, how will this end up? And it ended up that Dorrit's parents adopted me. So that is really, for me, a very touching story. This is how all this began. And I'm really more than glad that also my friends Shidam and Debbie are now part of this adventure. And that this, as Johnny said, this has really been set up in such a short time that it is amazing what is going on here, and I'm very glad that we have all your support here and facilitating things. And Asha has gone already, but we are extremely thankful to his support, of course, and I'm glad that Hille is here and helping setting up some of the ideas that we have introducing them, and also facilitating exchange between students. And Anna is here, one of the first who has spent a couple of weeks now here. So I am not allowed to talk too much. We will have a strong eye on the time frame, and so I'm going to give you a brief overview about cultural differences in child rearing, and I'm especially interested in the developmental phase of infancy because everything starts here. And then give you a couple of examples how culture really changes lots of things in the developmental process. And if I have time in the end, I would like to give you an example of the application of this culture-informed or context-informed way of seeing things. And I wish I could present you a short film that we just finished about let's say language training, language improvement of children with German as a second language, but also with German children from a lower socioeconomic background in daycare centers. And I have it with me in an English translation even, but the children's conversations have to be filled in with subtitles, and that hasn't been done. But we have an opportunity to see this later. It's really great. So, okay, infancy, of course, has to be seen from two perspectives, from an evolutionary interpretations. Human needs a preparatory period to be able to adapt to the complex social environment that constitutes their niche. I'm not going into more than saying this from this perspective, and also from saying that we are all prepared to process environmental information, and this is already part also of a cultural view. So cultural anthropological interpretation is infancy can be said to constitute a lens through which to understand critical cultural decisions and orientations, and it's really making cultural influences so clear in a phase of life, in a period that was usually considered to be primarily biologically influenced. So here are two pictures showing two different views on infants. You see on the left-hand side also a brief historical change. This is a picture, part of a picture that was very popular during the 1900s years all over Europe, where you can see infancy didn't even make it on the life stairs. So there are the life stairs in 10-year phases, and infancy was just beyond the phase. And it was the blooming, buzzing confusion, it was the fog-like state of mind, until during the 60s it became the competent infant with all the capacities to perceive and to process information and to learn. And on the other hand, we have in many environments, we have infancy as a completely different objective. It's like the major developmental task is to success in social priming, so it's growing into the social environment is very important. And I have said environment and culture a couple of times. I want to briefly give you an idea how we conceive it. So there is everything in the environment, the ecological setup, the subsistence mode, the affordances and constraints of the things. We capture this socio-demographic variables that are related to these kind of more basic environmental features. And the socio-demographic context is composed of basically the amount of formal education, and related to that the age of first parenthood, the number of children, and the family form. And within these contexts, the cultural models have emerged that are adaptive to this context that contain beliefs, values, behavioral prescriptions, norms, things like that, how you should behave, and this should is meant to be successful in that environment. And these cultural models inform socialization strategies that are these black box here composed of socialization goals, ethno theories, what people think about how to treat a baby, how to raise a baby, and finally parenting behaviors. And all these socialization strategies inform children's development, and children, of course, have an influence back on their families' socialization environments as well. And the cultural models are composed of norms and values, as I said, attitudes, and there are two dimensions that are extremely important here. And this is the dimension of autonomy and the dimension of relatedness. I think Shidam is going to talk maybe about that also. We learned a lot of her research and her work, her conceptions on this, on these topics that were very influential for the way we are conceiving it. And we, meanwhile, came up with a little different conception where we talk, and there are two extremes of this interplay between autonomy and relatedness. are depicted here. It's on the one hand psychological autonomy and on the other hand hierarchical relatedness, and you will see what I mean with this as I go through the different examples. So according to these two cultural models, there are two views on babies that were also visible in the picture before. The baby is passive and simply has to learn to adapt to the requirements of the society on the one hand, or the child is active from birth on and constructs and co-constructs his or her own development, as we can read in the Western textbooks. And the context of the apprenticeship-like model is a rural, low-educated farming villager environment, and we have Western urban educated middle class in the Western example. And there's a third group that also Chidum has highlighted us for. It's the urban educated middle class from non-Western societies that have different kind of, they have a combination of these different views. And as you can see in the different socio-demographic profiles that fit to these different groups, we have the Western middle class families with a high degree of formal education that they share with the non-Western middle class families, but we have different ages at first birth, different numbers of children, and different organizations of families. So let's see what's the style of parenting in the rural agrarian perspective. It's pragmatic training, apprentice life, responsive control, bodily closeness, monitoring, instructing, training, directing, controlling the infant's activities. I got now so sensitive to the word training. Mothers are keenly aware to train their children for their future roles as soon as they deem capable. And I want to give you a brief example of such an interaction and situation of a zoo mother with her 3-month-old baby. Again, these are mothers in the lab in Northwest Cameroon where we do a lot of research. And you can see when we ask the mothers to play with the babies, we see different things than we are used to see when we ask middle-class mothers from our society. So the body stimulation, body contact is very important in that respect. And they consider this as proper parenting, which is needed to raise a baby. And this is at home. So if there is exclusive time between one caregiver and one infant, you probably see things like this. What's the style of parenting? In the Western middle class perspective, it's accepting the baby's own wishes and will, conveying the impression of the baby being an intentional agent, evaluating the baby's needs as a separate autonomous person. And this looks this way. I mean, the baby is lying on the back, the mother is bending over the baby, there are toys involved, there is a lot of face-to-face contact, there is a lot of language involved, of conversations, and a lot of object simulation. So there are two very different kinds of experiences that infants in these two environments have, and so how can we then think that the same developmental result is coming out of these different experiences? Also, the contexts are different. In the rural context, there is multiple caregiving, especially sibling care, and this, for instance, is a typical picture. It's an open life in front of the compound and multi-generational households. The children are roaming around the village with the little ones on their backs or hips. But on the other hand, we have the dyadic relationship between few adult caregivers and the infant. Like, we have hundreds of pictures that look similar where the baby is always in the same position and the mother is always in the same position as well. It's distant. It's not much of body contact and not of body stimulation. So the modes of parenting, it's co-occurring care. Most childcare activities are simply part of women's ongoing life while they cook, weave, do laundry, chat, do another's hair, do all kinds of different chores that they have to do, farming, but it's not neglecting the baby. The attention is divided among different targets and not exclusive from different African environments. We see this, but we see it also in South America and in Asia in rural environments. And on the other hand, we have the exclusive dyadic attention. The most sensitive mothers are usually accessible to their infants, are aware even of their most subtle communication signals, wishes, and moods. And you can see the ethnocentric flavor of this quote already, that is, most subtle communications are exclusively interpreted as facial, as visible kind of signals, but not the fine, subtle bodily regulations that are in place in the different environments. And here, again, a couple of those exclusive attention pictures. So we have a universal parenting repertoire with basically these six components of parenting: primary care, face-to-face, body contact, body stimulation, object stimulation, and the verbal conversation and the modes. But they are used, this universal repertoire is used very differently in different environments and is also very differently interpreted. And this is such a profile, urban Germans and rural zoo villages. You can see that Germans have a lot of face-to-face contact, a lot of object simulations, and the villagers have lots of body stimulation and body contact. And this translates to later stages, to modes that are following these early experiences. Like if you look at play interactions with 19 months old, there is again these two groups. You see in the rural, so the mother has the initiative if we ask her to play with her child, which is not a usual situation, by the way. And also the ratio score is indicating this. And if you look at on the other hand, on the Germans, there is a lot of initiative going out from the children, and the mothers are following, and it's the diverse pattern. So all these different behavior patterns that we can observe over time are related to the different socialization goals. And just an example here, and here we have also the combined urban middle class families from non Western societies, and we can see that developed personal talents, express own preferences very clearly, are clearly in the Western urban middle class families preferred socialization goals, whereas being different from others and being assertive is very much rejected in the rural ones. So far for the autonomous goals, and a quite different picture for relational socialization goals. It's like respect elderly persons and do what parents say. I think these are the two most impressive things that is very much highlighted in rural families in India and in Cameroon, but also in urban Indian families, whereas it is rejected completely in German middle class families. So we have the evidence of real different patterns of experiences, and I could just give you a brief impression of that. And the non-Western urban middle-class families in fact show a combination of these two parenting styles. And we know that from neurophysiological research and from other sources as well, that the newborn period can be characterized as a brain imprint period. Accordingly, the neonatal environment has major and lasting consequences for development. This is why we are paying so much attention to the early months, to the first year of life, in order to see how these experiences inform the later development. And I'm giving you a couple of examples now of this developmental consequences. Here again, you have the model and the early experiences. And so the first thing is the timing of developmental achievements. And we did assessments of motor competence in children in different environments. And we can see that the Cameroonian zoo children outperform the German middle-class children in gross motor abilities, and we can see this in pictures. It's a 3-month-old baby having a complete posture control, can sit forever. No German middle-class infant could do this, and is used to all these kinds of experiences. And as you can see, there is strength in the body, and it's a complete different. Of course, it opens up different fields of sensory experiences, and we have the same kind of differences, even more pronounced when the babies are 6 months of age. But again, if you know exactly, if you look exactly into the items, you see that there are 2 items where the zoo children outperform the Germans, and this is makes stepping movements. Here the blue is the zoo and sits without support. You can see there are tremendous differences, but there are also 2 items where the German middle-class infants are much better than the zoo infants, and this is extremely reflecting the kind of experiences that they have. Lying on their backs, and this is about, it's not very visible about all, but they have a little tactile stimulation, but of course they are lying on their own also for an extended period of time, and so they are much better than a grasp food with hands and rolls from back to stomach. These are experiences that they can make by lying on the ground, that so babies just don't have a chance to learn. And this is also what we do have to be very sensitive with administering Western developed tests to non-Western environments. So these differences are parts of developmental trajectories that mirror cultural emphases. And I want to show you an example from a study that we did on the so-called 2-month shift. The 2-month shift is a time period when babies are awake for longer periods of time, more responsive to social signals, and it's considered to be a maturational effect. And as you can see, the zoo babies and the German babies, they show this maturational 2 months effect, waking and gazing behavior very similarly, but the parents respond very differently. Whereas the German middle class pick up the alertness of the baby and respond with more facial contact. The facial contact is significantly increasing, whereas the zoo mothers do not pick up this because their face-to-face contact not only is not important, it is also not appropriate to have this kind of interactional behavior. We did another study which pretty similarly demonstrates this with contingencies. Contingencies are the prompt reactions to infant sickness, so the things that Mary Ainsworth already has stressed to be so important. And you can see there is an equal amount of contingencies if we measure them in different behavioral channels, but we see that there is no change over time in auditory, proximal, and visual in the zoo case, and we see that we have the significant changes over the visual contingencies, and they are dropping extremely the proximal contingencies or the body contingencies. But it's how to do it. Okay. So a couple of colleagues did with the same longitudinal data analysis of infant smiling, and again we have the same picture here. From 6 to 12 weeks, the smiling mother to baby increases, whereas it remains the same in the zoo sample, and also the baby smiling to mother also is the same, increasing in the German middle class and not changing in the zoo sample. So you see the cultural emphasis that I put on face-to-face contact and on mutual smiling and mutual visual exchange is informing how these children develop, and it clearly shows this interactional process that is so important. I skip another example. I want to give you also an idea about developmental precursors, preconditions, and consequences that also have different cultural phenotypes in the end. So this may look a little bit difficult, but I'll walk you through this slide. So we have different pathways to post-social behavior. What we were interested was post-social behavior when the children were around 2 years of age, 19 months, 2 years of age, and we had a situation where an experimenter played with an infant in the laboratory, and somehow the arm of the experimenter's teddy bear broke, and he became very sad, or she became very sad, and started crying and do all kinds of things, and we were observing what the child is doing in the situation. Is the child having kind of empathy in the situation, or is the child helping, or is offering the own teddy bear, and things like that. So it's a standard situation in that respect. And the Western psychology, developmental psychology, says that the empathic concern is a consequence of the self-other, or a differentiation. That means that children can recognize themselves, and there's also a standard paradigm that you observe children in front of a mirror, you put them a mark in the face, whoosh, besides the nose, so that peripheral vision cannot obscure the findings, and you are reacting, and then this child sees him or herself with the mark in the mirror, whether the child touches the mark or do anything that indicates that the child recognizes that there is something wrong in the face or not. So you do this also with 18 months of age usually, and in different studies in the Western middle class psychology, we find that this recognizing in the mirror is a necessary precondition of this empathic concern, and then the helping behavior in the situation. And we did this study in a Berlin middle class sample, and we found exactly the same thing. And we did it also in Delhi middle class families, and we didn't find this connection between self-recognition and pro-social behavior, although there was no differences in self-recognizing, the same amount of children who recognized themselves, and also in same amount of children who showed empathic concern. So the developmental result was the same, but it had different histories. In the daily sample, it was more predicted by the mother's pro-social socialization goals. And so Yasha, my former student, has linked it to the Syrians, that the shared experience that the children have is motivating and finally showing this empathic pro-social behavior, whereas in the Berlin sample, in line with the psychological autonomy, it's not. So, and a different example also from our study group is we were looking for children's autobiographical memory. We did this with 3-year-olds, also with 4-year-olds, and so in the literature we have the finding that maternal elaborations are predictive of children's contributions in joint reminiscing situation, and so we assessed with 19 months the data kind of that I was showing to you before, like in play situation, whether the mothers were following the child initiatives, or whether the child was following the maternal request, and vice versa. And we assessed the maternal elaborations when the children were 3 years. And you can see again that the maternal elaborations are predictive of children's contributions in these joint reminiscing situations, more strongly connected in Berlin than in Delhi, but also in Delhi as well. And toddlers following maternal requests was predictive for children's participation in the daily sample only. And this is very interesting because in our child care philosophy, that is also applied to a large extent in programs and in counseling and everywhere. We tell parents to follow the children and to not direct the children to do things, but in a different cultural environment we find exactly this behavior is predicted. And this is the starting point for this language training program that we have. I have some slides that also developmental gestalts are different in the end, but I'm not going to show these because that is Hillis attachment research, and there may be more opportunities to talk about this. But this research also definitely shows and distinctly shows that how attachment is defined and how it is regulated, how emotional situations are regulated between children and adults differs. So we have different timetables, we have different trajectories, we have different predictions, and we have different outcomes and different phenotypes. So how can we think that with one psychology we can treat everybody and help every child in every situation at the best? And I cannot do what I wanted to do. To give you an example about breastfeeding, I'm very interested in breastfeeding because it's a major topic also in World Health Organization and UNICEF programs to improve breastfeeding in many parts where children really suffer. And it's done with this Western model. So mothers are trained with face-to-face situation, and they should look at the infant during breastfeeding and bond with the infant during breastfeeding. But most of the mothers, the 95% that are not Western middle class, may have, or many of them, at least 30-40%, like the agrarian people, have completely different ideas what is good. So we should teach them to breastfeed, but to do it as a co-occurring activity, to do it while they are doing other chores as well, and to teach them about the benefit of breastfeeding, but not telling them the situation they should do it. And this is why many of these programs do not work. And I want to, and also this is the views on this breastfeeding also, as I can put nicely short if I would have the time, change with formal education. So there are many things that change with formal education, and we had the chance to study those groups, the same ethnic group having different degrees of formal education, and we can see how it changed, but that is also Shigena's topic. I want to close with this long quote by Bob Levine, who was one of the pioneers, or still is, thanks God, in the field. And he said in 1977, "My aim in this necessarily speculative analysis is to suggest first that culture, no less than biology, contributes to the presumptive basis of parenthood. It is to the ways in which parents perceive the task of rearing children. Second, that these ways are rational and that they contain information about environmental contingencies previously experienced by the population and assimilated into its cultural tradition. Third, that this information concerns features of the environment that are most salient to the health and welfare of the child and appropriate responses to them. Fourth, that a parent who conforms to such customary prescription may be unaware of their past or present efficacy, but may view them as religiously or ethically ordained. And five, that this adaptive component concealed in child-rearing customs must be clarified to understand the constraints within which other cultural values operate and to assess the prospects of change." And I think if we consider that he has been saying this since 1977, and many people have repeated it so many times, it's about time for Never to come up and change everything. And before I close, I want also to thank Nadera, who has taught me a complete different view also of the complexity of the situation, but one I do not want to miss also. Okay, thank you very much.